welcome back to A Change of Heart podcast. I'm your host, Angel Jackson. And if you're joining me for the first time, hey girl, welcome to the family. If you're a returning listener, hey girl, hey, welcome back. Come on in, get comfortable. You know the drill. So today we are going to have a little bit more of a story time. It's going to be a little different from the other episodes that I do for A Change of Heart, but there's some lessons in that as well that I want to share. As I mentioned in the beginning of this season, that the theme is really about healing in real time. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do this season with that being the theme and not talk about an area that I've been believing God for healing for the last 3 years. And so we're going to take us a deep dive. But before we do that, we're going to do our vitals check. And if you're tuning in for the first time, our vitals check is just a check-in. How's your heart? How's your mind? How you're doing? How's your week been going? And so I'm going to start us off. I have had a week. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. This has been just one of those weeks where it feels like and another thing and another thing and another thing. And I don't feel discouraged, but I am just having one of those weeks where it has felt like it's been one thing after another, to the point that I was like, God, enough, like enough already. Can we not? But I do want to be intentional about not carrying the stress and the weight from this week into the next week. And so I'm trying to clear my mind and be at peace going into this next week. But if I'm being transparent, which that's what we're here for, my vitals are a little poor this week. I've been struggling a little bit, but I am very encouraged and challenged to cultivate joy in this new week. So let me know, what are your vitals looking like today? Y'all on life support? How y'all doing? Y'all all right? Y'all okay? You can leave your response in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. Feel free to send me a DM if you want to, but check in. How's your vitals? All right, let's go ahead and talk about today's topic. So let me go ahead and get a couple of disclaimers out of the way, because I know I would feel the push to want to give these disclaimers throughout this story time. So I'm going to go ahead and give them up front so I don't have to keep saying it. For starters, I've always shared that this podcast is for women. I created it with women in mind. I speak as though I'm speaking to women, and I'm going to talk about things today that are very specific to women. Men, if you're watching, if you're listening, do whatever you need to with that information, okay? That is your forewarning. Also, there are going to be a little bit more intimate commentary that we're going to talk about today, that I'm going to go ahead and say this is my TMI disclaimer, okay? We're going ahead and putting that out there right now. And the last one, I had every intention to start this saying, long story short. I love to say that. Y'all, this is a podcast and this is about to be a long story, okay? So buckle up, buttercup, because we about to take a ride. All right, let's jump into today's topic, when God doesn't heal. So I feel like to give you all the full picture of where I am today, I need to take you back to 2023 to get you on board with how I got to the decision that I'm making today. So back in 2023, February, I got engaged. And at that time, my husband and I had already decided that we didn't want to have children. And we had also decided that we weren't going to have a long engagement period. We didn't want a wedding, so it wasn't going to be like a couple years engaged or anything. So in May of 2023, I got on birth control. I got on the pill. And I thought that I was handling the hormonal changes well. However, my husband was like, absolutely not. This is not working. Apparently, I was having horrible mood swings. So I ended up getting off of the pill, and we ended up discussing other options. And I decided to get on get an IUD. So for those of you who don't know, IUD is an intrauterine device, and it goes inside of your cervix, and it's like a little T-shaped thing, and they have strings that are attached to it that'll be relevant at some point. So that is, I want to say September of 2023 when I get the IUD put in. And so the doctor had already told me at that point that it is not abnormal to have longer periods, heavier periods. It's not abnormal to have breakthrough bleeding when it's not time for my period. It's not abnormal to have some cramping and things for the first few months of having the IUD. So keep in mind, this is September. I got married November of 2023. We get married November of 2023, and I was starting to have some issues with bleeding. Intercourse was very painful, and I didn't know necessarily if there was a reason for it. Prior to my husband and I getting married, I had been abstinent since 2009. So we have this long period in my mind. I'm like, I'm basically a virgin again. Okay. And so I'm contributing it to that. I'm contributing it to the fact that I have this IUD that I just got put in like a month and a half ago at that point. And so they said that it wouldn't necessarily be uncommon for me to be experiencing these things. I'm experiencing, like I said, bleeding, some cramping, some pain. And so I'm like, I guess this is normal starting out. So fast forward into, I would say maybe January, February of 2024 at this point. I am continuing to have issues with bleeding. I'm continuing to have issues with like pelvic pain, pressure, discomfort. And they did say that although it's normal for you to experience these things, that if it's getting to the point where you're having like sharp pains or you're having bleeding, and I told you there's strings that are attached to the IUD. If you go to check your strings and you don't feel your strings, you need to call us because it could be a possibility that your IUD is out of place. And so I want to say it was maybe like February, March-ish where them strings was gone. Okay. And so I'm like, crap, the IUD, I've convinced myself at this point that IUD is in my kidney. Like it's in a whole different organ at this point. And that is what's causing all of these symptoms that I'm having. So I immediately make an appointment with my OBGYN, and they check me like how you would be checked for a pap smear. And she's like, yeah, I can't see your strings. She tried to, she said claw them out, but she tried to use like some type of tool to see if she could get it out of my cervix, and she wasn't able to. So she ended up scheduling me for a transvaginal ultrasound. So that was scheduled for, I want to say it was a few weeks after I'd had that initial appointment with her. And I am a research girly at heart. So anytime something happens, I'm going to research things. So I immediately am on Google trying to figure out what does an IUD look like on an ultrasound. So as I'm getting it done, I can see for myself if it is on this screen. So I had the appointment to have the ultrasound done, and I'm sitting there, and the girl got her little wand going, and I don't see anything that looked like what Google said an IUD should look like on an ultrasound. So I am convinced at this point that ultrasound it ain't where it's supposed to be. It's no longer in my cervix. I don't know where it is. I've convinced myself I'm going to have surgery to get it removed at this point. And I'm just like, where is this IUD at, child? And please don't let there be a baby that pops up on this ultrasound. So luckily, that day I was able to have the meeting with the doctor the same day that I was getting the ultrasound done, but the appointment was an hour apart. So I'm sitting in the lobby after I had the ultrasound, and I'm texting my husband like, that IUD was not showing up on that ultrasound. Like, I don't know what she's going to tell me, but I'm probably going to have surgery for them to figure out like where this IUD is and for it to be removed. And so they finally call me back to meet with the doctor, and she's going over the ultrasound, and she says, so the ultrasound shows that your IUD is in place, but it was really difficult to find it because your fibroids are blocking it. And I said, my what? And she was like, oh, you didn't know you had them. And I said, no, I had no idea. Like, this is the first time I'd ever heard anything of me having fibroids. And the reason why I was so shocked by this is because I know people personally who have fibroids, and I know the horror stories of it. And I've never had any issues with painful periods. I've never had any issues with heavy bleeding on my periods. And that is what I knew of when it came to fibroids. I later found out that you can have fibroids and be asymptomatic. But for me, I just associated with my friends who have awful periods, debilitating cramps, where they're bleeding through overnight pads in an hour. And that's never been my experience when it comes to my periods. And I'm not someone who I feel like has like a high pain tolerance or anything. Like, I feel like I would know if I was experiencing the symptoms that are typically associated with fibroids. And so I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? So she said the IUD is likely managing like your heavy bleeding and things like that. So you don't, it's really up to you if you want to do anything, but if they're not bothering you, you can just monitor them. So at that point, this is like springtime, early spring, late winter of 2024. So at that time they were I had two. One was 3.4 centimeters. The second one was 4.3 centimeters. And so I'm like, okay. So in my mind at that time, I assumed that the issues that I was having as far as the bleeding, the pelvic pain, pressure, and things like that, I associated it more so with me being abstinent for so long, because it was more so happening around intercourse, and it wasn't necessarily a thing where I was experiencing this all the time or it being period related. And so I wasn't associating the symptoms that I was experiencing to be caused by the fibroids, because I figured if they're this size, then I've likely had them for a while and I just didn't know. And so I didn't really think anything of it because I wasn't having, like I said, the heavy periods, painful periods, all of that. So I decided just to monitor them at that point. So fast forward through 2024, I am still continuing to have these same issues. I'm still going back to the doctor for them to check my IUD, and it's the same thing. And so now we're going into, I would say like April of 2025. So by April of 2025, the pelvic pain, pressure, discomfort, all of that has now picked up. I wouldn't say significantly, but now it's not a thing that is just like associated with intercourse. It is very much a thing where I can just be standing, sitting, whatever, and I'll get like this sharp pain, or I'll get this pain specifically on the right side of my pelvis that felt like, this is a little nasty, but that feels like a gas bubble, but there's no gas. And it's like, it's just this pressure, and it's this kind of like a hollow feeling. And so I end up going back to the doctor again because I'm continuing. The bleeding is now increasing, the pelvic pain, the pressure, discomfort, all of this is increasing. And it's now more so a thing of I can just be sitting and I'm starting to have like this pain and pressure that I wasn't experiencing as consistently before. So I reach out to my OBGYN and I'm like, hey, can we just go ahead and schedule me for another transvaginal ultrasound? Because I want y'all to check the IUD, but we're not going to see anything just doing the regular pap smear. I'm not trying to pay another $70 copay for y'all to tell me, oh, we can't see it. We need for you to come in and do the transvaginal ultrasound. So they agreed to do that. And so this time when I had the ultrasound done, I wasn't able to get an appointment with the doctor to review the results the same day. So that appointment, I want to say, was scheduled for, it was like 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. So I had to wait for quite some time. So I ended up having the ultrasound done, and a week later, I went to Mexico with 2 of my girlfriends. And while I'm in Mexico on my girls trip, having the time of my life, I get a phone call from my OBGYN office. And I immediately knew something was wrong, because they're not going to call you they're not going to call you if you already have a follow-up appointment and it's something they can just discuss with you at your follow-up appointment. So I get the call, it's just saying like, hey, I'm with so-and-so's doctor's office. I need for you to give me a call back. So I step out the room, I call, and she lets me know that the fibroids are growing, and likely the reason I'm experiencing the pelvic pain, pressure, discomfort, specifically on my right side, because it's now enlarged my uterus because of how they're growing. And I just started crying because I'm like, what? Like, what is this? So she said that when I had the follow-up appointment, that the doctor would go over with me like my options at that point. So I call my husband. I'm trying to hold this together because, like I said, I'm on my girls' trip. And granted, these are like good friends. I could have cried in front of them. I could have told them what was going on. But it's also like, we're in Mexico. I'm not trying to kill the vibe. You know what I mean? So I'm just kind of sitting there and trying to like get through. And it was our last day as well. I'm just trying to like get through the day, be in good spirits. So I call my husband. I let him know what's going on. And then I get back home. And I started doing some research on things to ultimately help with managing fibroids, getting them to shrink without going a surgical route. And I see all of these things about different supplements you can take, different vitamins, different teas, changes in your diet, all of these things. So I keep those things in mind, go into this meeting a few weeks later with my doctor to discuss like what my options are. So at that time, she told me that the fibroids are now 5.1 centimeters and 5.3 centimeters. So remember when we had them checked in 2024, we were 3.4, 4.3. Now we're 5.1, 5.3. And it's now enlarged my uterus. And so that is what's causing that, that pressure, that pain, discomfort, and the bleeding at this point. And so I'm like, okay, what are my options? Like, what can I do? So the first thing she said is you can have a hysterectomy. And fibroids is one of the biggest reasons that women get hysterectomies, but that is not it's not the only way to treat them. It's the only way that is a full guarantee that you will not get any new ones. There will be no regrowth or anything because they take out your uterus and they're uterine fibroids. And so, although I don't want children, I've had this question from a few people, like, well, why don't you just get a hysterectomy? I don't want to have a major surgery if I don't have to. And I'll be 38 this year. I don't want to be forced into menopause. So there's that. Then she also said that she could prescribe me a medication called, I believe it was Myfembree. And that ultimately helps to manage like heavy bleeding and things, but I'm not experiencing that. I'm experiencing more so of like this breakthrough bleeding here and there, and then pain and bleeding when it comes to intercourse. And so she said she could prescribe that, but she doesn't think that that would actually help with the symptoms I'm experiencing because it's not related to periods per se. It's not like this heavy bleeding, this heavy cramping and things. Then the other option was a procedure called a SESA, where they essentially burn off the fibroids. And I did some research into that. It's a fairly newish procedure. And I researched it. I could not find a lot of information on it, so I didn't feel comfortable going that route. And then the last option was I believe it's pronounced laparoscopic myomectomy. And I know people who've had that procedure done before. I've seen celebrities talk about having that procedure done. And although it's less invasive than having a hysterectomy, you still are out of work for 4 to 6 weeks. It is still it's still a pretty serious surgery, and there's no guarantee that they won't come back. So I didn't feel comfortable necessarily going that route either. And the last option is to just wait and see, like watchful waiting, and we see that they're continuing to grow. And so I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so I asked her about, well, what about taking vitamins, supplements, like changes in my diets, cutting out red meat, dairy, like all of these different things. And she straight up told me no, like there's no scientific proof that that works. And TikTok said otherwise, just FYI. But I definitely was like, I'm gonna see for myself because the options that you gave me, I'm not feeling it. So we're gonna wait, and I'll follow up with you if I decide that I want to go any further with anything that you recommended. So that was, I think that was around like April or May when I had that conversation with her. So from that point on, like I said, I'd already done my research about things. I spent over $100 on different supplements, all of these things, teas, things that I ordered off of Amazon. And I started cutting out red meat, dairy, all kinds of things from my diet. I'm like, we are going to stick to this for a year, and then we're going to see what happens next year. So one of the side effects for one of the supplements that I was taking was headaches. And so I started doing more research and just trying to see like, okay, is this like actually really essential in helping the growth of fibroids? And as I'm doing research, literally I'm realizing Google saying one thing, ChatGPT is saying another thing, TikTok is saying another thing, YouTube is saying another thing. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I got really frustrated because I called myself trying to take all of these different things to help with estrogen levels, hormones, all of this stuff. And what I thought I was taking that was supposed to be helpful, one source is saying like this actually increases your estrogen. Something else is saying, no, this is actually what helped me with my fibroids. And so I just got frustrated and I decided to cut those things out and I focused more so on my diet. So that was like early summer of 2025. So fast forward later into 2025, and I'm just continuing to have the same issues. So the bleeding is kind of starting to pick up again, and the pelvic pain, pressure, discomfort, that is, I don't want to say intensifying, but it is something that's becoming more noticeable. And so fast forward into January 2026, this year, and I bled for 3 days, not on my period. And I'm like, something has to give. Like, something has to give. I just remember feeling really frustrated. I remember feeling really not defeated or hopeless, but just in this place of like, I don't know what else to do. So I had a conversation with my husband. I'm like, I want to find a doctor who like is a fibroid specialist. That's all they do. That's all they work on. That's all they focus on. And if I have to go to Northern Virginia, that's what I'm going to do. Like, we got to figure out something. So I ended up getting on Google, and let me also say this. I had already looked into fibroid specialists initially, and the doctor that I was going through as far as my OBGYN, she was one of them that was supposed to like specialize. I wouldn't say specialize in it, but when I searched for it, she was one of the people that came up initially. And my experience was underwhelming. We'll say that. And so I wanted to find like an office that all y'all deal with is fibroids pretty much. So I'm getting on Google and I come across something called uterine fibroid embolization. And that was my first time ever hearing about that. That was not an option that was given to me when I met with the doctor the previous year. And so I started doing some research, looking into it. And I came across this place called Richmond Vascular Center, and they had really great reviews. The doctor, that's literally all he does is uterine fibroid embolizations. That's what he specializes in. So I'm like, okay, bet, let's make an appointment. So I scheduled a consultation with him, and my husband and I met with him for probably like an hour for this consultation. And he was so thorough in answering all of our questions. He was very knowledgeable when it came to fibroids. He was very knowledgeable in the questions that we were asking him. It didn't feel like he had to be like, well, let me look this up, or like he felt it. He came across very confident in the information that he knew, the procedure that he does. And it was very comforting from previous, in comparison to other conversations I'd had with doctors regarding my fibroids. And this was kind of the first time that I felt like, okay, I feel like this is an option that is least invasive. I don't have to be put asleep for it. And this is something that I feel like I trust this person with the knowledge that they have. And this is literally all that he does. This is his specialty. And so he told me that I would have to have an MRI done, because that gives a bigger picture of the actual size of the fibroids, the location of them, as well as what type of fibroid it is. So when I've had the transvaginal ultrasounds done in the past, it always came back that I had intramural fibroids. And I shared that with him. He's like, I understand, but we still, have the MRI done just so we can verify exactly what type of fibroids they are, because different fibroids ultimately pose a greater risk for infection with this procedure. And so we want to know ultimately like what we're dealing with. And so I told my husband, it was like, at that point, I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to go forward with that. But I said, I want to at least have the MRI done so that I'll be able to see what I'm dealing with. It does give a better picture and I can make a decision from there. So a couple of weeks later, I have the MRI done, and the MRI was fine. I've heard a lot of bad things about MRIs. Granted, I'm not claustrophobic, so that probably helps. But it was fine. Mine was scheduled for 7:30 at night. That's around my bedtime. I fell asleep in there, so I didn't have any issues with that. But I had a pelvic MRI done, and then I went and met with the doctor. I think it was like 2 weeks after I had the MRI done. The problem, however, the MRI results were uploaded to my chart before I had the appointment with my doctor. And so I saw that my fibroids were now, my largest one was now 6.5 centimeters, 5.9 centimeters, and now I have a third one that has grown that is 1.3 centimeters. And I found this out at work, and I shut my door and I cried because I'm like, what is the reason? Like, I'm trying to eat right. I'm trying to like cut out these things, do these things. I'm trying to do the right things. And it felt like it was for nothing. If I'm being honest, it felt like it did nothing. And not only have they grown, but they have also, I now have a new one that has grown. And so I was just like I was disappointed, even though I knew that they had grown, but I think just seeing that there is now a third one that has grown, it was just like, bruh, what are we doing here? And so I'm like, okay, I feel more inclined now to go forward with the uterine fibroid embolization. However, another plot twist here. As I had mentioned, the transvaginal ultrasound always showed that they were intramural fibroids. However, the MRI showed that they were subserosal and submucosal fibroids, and those are the ones that can potentially pose a greater risk. And so now I'm just frustrated because I don't know what the right decision is to do. And I just felt I wouldn't say I felt defeated. It just felt like I can't fix this. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this right. I've tried to do it. I've prayed about it. I've fasted about it. Like, I've done all the things, and I just don't know what else to do at this point. So I had the conversation with my husband, and I'm like, I think I'm going to go forward with the uterine fibroid embolization because I don't feel like it's helpful to just continue to wait and watch every year, and they are getting larger and larger and larger in size, and they are causing more and more issues. So I go in for my appointment with the doctor to review my MRI results. And he was not concerned about the fact that they were not all intramural. He said based off of their location that he did not have a concern for there being an increased risk of infection. So that did give me a little bit more peace about going forward with the procedure. And in addition to that, the largest one that is 6.5 centimeters, I'll insert the picture somewhere here. It's pretty much taking up more than half of my uterus at this point. I don't know if I have a small uterus or what, because when I looked up the size of a 6.5 centimeter fibroid, it said that it was like the size of an orange. And this thing is getting bigger than an orange. And I confirmed with the doctor, what I'm seeing on the MRI is the actual size of it and how much space is taking up in my uterus. And it's taking up a lot of space in my uterus, which is also contributing to this pelvic pain, pressure, discomfort, and bleeding that I'm having. Also, with the MRI, I wanted them to confirm that it wasn't showing anything else going on with my uterus that I needed to be concerned with, such as, I believe it's called adenomyosis. I may not be pronouncing that correctly. That there were no cysts, there was no endometriosis, nothing else that was showing that could potentially be causing the symptoms that I'm having. And the only thing that is showing are the fibroids. So everything else has been ruled out at this point. There's nothing cancerous, there's nothing cystic, there's literally nothing in there except for the fibroids. So the procedure it's known to be uncomfortable. It's known that the recovery is rough. And I knew that going into it, but it still was a least invasive procedure than having an actual surgery like the myomectomy or having a hysterectomy. And the recovery time for it was 7 to 10 days versus it being a 4 to 6 week type of recovery. And so I'm like, okay. So he's going over everything with me. He gives me all of my pre-op stuff. He's not pre-op, but he's giving me all of the information for medications I need to start before the procedure, all the medications I'm going to have to take for 7 days after the procedure. He's like literally walking me through every single step. And then towards the end of it, he lets me know that on my MRI, so I had a pelvic MRI, keep in mind. So it showed that I had 2 spots that showed up indeterminate on my MRI on my hip. And I'm like, what? Like, God, what are we doing? What do you mean? And so he said, I'm not saying that it's cancer, but I would recommend that you have an x-ray done. And then I want to refer you to an ortho-oncologist to have that checked out because we don't know what it is. Obviously, he doesn't specialize in that, but there's something that is showing on your bones of your hip that you need to get checked out. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I go back home. I go over all of this information with my husband. He didn't go with me because he was sick that day. So I'm going over all of this information with him. I'm explaining the hip situation. I'm explaining the list of medications that I'll have to take and everything. So he's looking through the paperwork and I just feel like tears coming up and I just feel this overwhelming disappointment, honestly. And I just broke down. I broke down. And my husband, he's just kind of like, like, let's talk about it. What's going on? How you're feeling? Like, where are the tears coming from? Let's talk. And so I just shared with him, like, I hate that I have to go through this. And I hate that I'm having to figure out make these decisions. I hate that I'm having to have this procedure done that I know is going to be uncomfortable. I hate that now I got to be concerned if I got cancer in my bones in my hip. Like, I hate that I have like all of these different things that are going on and I don't know what to do. Like, I'm questioning, am I doing the right thing by getting the procedure done? Should I just pray about it more? Like, I don't know what else to do. And I feel frustrated, and not at God, but I feel frustrated with the situation. And I hate that this is another thing that we have to deal with, because I'm not going to go into details with this specifically, but throughout our marriage, we have had so many external factors that we have had to overcome. We've had so many hardships that we've had to overcome together. And it just felt like, this is another thing that we're now facing that we have to figure out. And I always have to give credit where credit is due. My husband is very good at having a level of faith when I don't have it. When I'm spiraling, when I am in a place where I'm struggling to hold on to it, he's always been very good at keeping me grounded and kind of bringing me back in and just reminding me like, hey, it's okay. It's okay to cry. We're going to be all right. Like, yes, we've had a lot that we've gone through, but I'd rather us go through it together than have to go through it alone. Like, he's very good at just being that grounding in times where I'm just like, this sucks and I hate it here and I don't want to do this anymore. So we talked about it and we decided that we are going to go forward with doing the uterine fibroid embolization. And that was a decision that was, I don't want to say it was hard to come to, but it was one that I was going back and forth on. Like, am I making the right decision? Do I just need to trust God more with this? And I eventually came to a place of peace of that God can heal me in this way as well. And I think sometimes we do feel like the healing can only come supernaturally, but he can absolutely heal me through this procedure as well. And after talking with the doctor, talking with my husband, and even praying about it, I felt like I had peace to go forward in this direction. And let me save you all any think pieces you want to leave. By the time this episode comes out, I will have already had the procedure. I've not had it as of today, but by the time that this comes out, I will have already had the procedure done. I will have already been through recovery for it. And I intentionally did that because, like I said, I've already seen the horror stories. I've already seen the great stories and everything in between. And I wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, I have peace about it. I've consulted God about it. My husband has peace about it. I didn't want anyone to say anything that would make me question something that I already have in process. So I say that to say, by the time this comes out, it's already done. So don't bother with, oh, it's already done, y'all. Okay. But I just felt like I had peace in going forward with it, even though it wasn't necessarily the way that I thought that I would get healing. But here we are. And as far as with the hip, I had an appointment. I went and had the x-ray done. The x-ray essentially could not determine what the two spots are that are showing on my hip. They recommended me to have another MRI done. And when I met with the ortho-oncologist, she did not seem concerned about it being cancerous. And I said, you know what, God? One thing at a time. One thing at a time. If you're not concerned about it, it's above me at this point. Okay? It is above me. This is above my pay grade. And that is a problem for Angel in another time. But for right now, we're going to focus on these fibroids because enough. Enough already. I'm not even going to worry about that. So that's above me at this point. They recommend me to have another MRI done. Insurance covers things, but MRIs are not cheap at all. And I'm just at a point where I really am focusing on this one thing right now and literally believing God by faith that you're going to take care of that because you're not going to put all of this on me. I believe by faith that God ain't going to put all of this on me. So I'm surrendering that to him. We're going to have that MRI done maybe next year at this point. I don't know, but it's above me. It's above my pay grade. It is above my care. So with all of that being said, I told you I was going to be a long story. I told y'all to buckle up. I do want to share some things that I have learned throughout this process about myself and about God, and that has helped me to navigate these last 3 years. And the thing that I learned about myself in this situation is how much I have grown in my honesty with God, because throughout this, I've yet to have a moment where I said, God, why won't you heal me? Because I know that you can. I know that God is capable of healing me. I know if he wanted to pluck me in my forehead right now in this very minute and heal me of my fibroids, he 1000% could do that. But more than anything, I have been very honest with God about my frustrations throughout this process. I've been very candid with God about not wanting to deal with this, not wanting to go through this, but not saying to him, like, why won't you do this for me? And I even said to God, there was a time where I was out here living in sin. I was out here fornicating, and I was not having the issues that I am having now when it came to intimacy. And now I'm in covenant and I'm doing it the right way. And all these things are happening and it just does not feel fair. But here we are. And I said that like jokingly, but also for real though. And I have been very honest with God about how I'm processing things, how I'm feeling about things, my frustrations, my disappointment, all of that. But I can also say with confidence that I have history with God. I have a track record with God that has shown me that God comes through, that God does not leave me. He does not forsake me. I have a history with God where he has constantly moved things on my behalf, literal mountains. I have history with God where he has opened doors for me that I couldn't open for myself. It wasn't nothing but God that did it. And I share that because in the midst of these last couple of years and the pain, the bleeding, the issues, like all of these things, I have yet to have this feeling or question, God, why won't you do this for me? Or to feel like God has forsaken me, because he hasn't done it, for the simple fact that I have a history with God of him showing up. And so for me to say in this, not even just this one thing, because there have been a multitude of things that have not gone right in these last couple of years, but I cannot look at God and say, you've forsaken me, or you have not come through for me, or you don't show up for me, or you won't do this thing for me, when I have history of him being the God who moves on my behalf. I have a history of him showing up for me. And this one thing does not negate that history. It does not rewrite that history. It does not change that history. And I have just found peace in that for some reason. And I say for some reason, but I found peace in that because I know his track record. I know who he's been to me. I know who he will continue to be to me. And the fact that he has not moved in this instance, it does not change who he is to me. It does not change what he has been and what he will continue to be. And I think more than anything, it's helped me to have a more transparent and honest relationship with him, while also holding space for two things to be true. Yes, this sucks. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. This is very disappointing. This is very frustrating. This is something that I would not wish on anybody. I don't want to have to go through this. I wouldn't wish this on anybody else. But it doesn't change who God is because he's allowing me to go through this. It doesn't change his heart for me. It doesn't change his ability to heal. It doesn't change that he's been a waymaker in other ways of my life. And so I'm not going to sit here and act as though God has failed me because this situation is uncomfortable, because this situation is frustrating to me. If nothing else, like, God, you ain't moving in this instance, but that just means you're going to move in another one. His track record has shown me that just because he doesn't move in this way doesn't mean he's not going to move in that way. Just because he doesn't open this door doesn't mean he's not going to open a window. And so I'm sharing that because I understand. I cannot stress enough. I understand the frustration of feeling like God isn't moving. He's not answering you. You see him doing it for other people and you question, God, why won't you do this for me? I want to challenge you to bring your frustrations to God. I want to challenge you to bring your disappointments to God when God doesn't heal. Not that he can't, not that he won't, but when he chooses not to. We may never know what that reason is, but when he doesn't heal, are you being honest about how you feel in that? Are you bringing those things to him? But even more so, do you remember your history that you have with him? Do you remember the things that he did? Do you remember the mountains that he's moved before? Is he not still God because he doesn't move this mountain for you right now? Is he not still God because years have passed and you have not seen an outcome or seen the outcome that you want? Because he hasn't done it yet, does that change who he is? Does that change who he will always be? And I think sometimes we have to be reminded of that because it is very easy to overlook who he's always been, how he's always shown up, the other ways that he's made, the other mountains that he's moved when you are in the middle of a test, when you are in the middle of a trial that is trying your faith on every single side and you don't understand, God, why won't you do this for me? Why won't you heal me? I know that you can. This could be an amazing testimony, right? This could be an amazing testimony of how you just heal me. And doctors will know that you are the God who heals. I will have this testimony to share. Okay, but can you not say that he is still the God who heals just because he hasn't healed you? Does that not change the healings that we've seen in other ways and in other people? I share that because I understand. I genuinely understand being in a process where you are believing God for something that he doesn't respond to. Or let me rephrase that. He doesn't respond to it in the way that you want him to. Does that change who he is to you? You really have to ask yourself, like, does that change who God is because he won't do this for me? We can be very conditional when it comes to our relationship with God. And imagine if he was like that with us. Like, let's be honest about that. And I'm not saying this to minimize anyone's experience or the hard things that you are going through, because I'm sharing a piece of a hard thing that I've been going through recently, but that's only a small piece of it. But I can truly say that it is something freeing that comes with being honest with God about where you are, how you feel. So many of you are not allowing yourselves to be honest with how you feel about your current circumstances because you are pretending to be okay when you are actually upset with God, where you are actually upset at your current circumstances, the fact that God won't move, that he has not moved, that he has not changed your situation, and you are so good at pretending that you're just going through the motions. You're still going to church, you're still leading worship, you're still doing all of the things, but you have so much resentment towards God in your heart. You have so much anger, bitterness towards God. And God's like, that does not bother me. Bring it to me. Bring it to me. I can handle all of your emotions, all of your feelings, but be honest with me so I can heal it, so that I can show you that I haven't forsaken you. I know that this is uncomfortable, but there's some things that God is going to allow us to walk through that we may never understand. He's not going to heal us. He's not going to change the situation, but he'll still use it in a way that brings him glory and that ultimately is for our good. And we may not be able to understand that when we are walking through hard seasons that don't make sense, that we don't understand. God, why is this my portion? Why is this the thing that I have to fight? Why is this the thing that I have to go through? But trust me when I say God doesn't waste anything. I believe that with every part of my being. God does not waste anything, even your hard thing. So even as you are going through a season where you are believing God and trusting God for something, let me also say this. I had to release the expectation of, or not even so much the expectation, but the perspective of, if I have a procedure done, if I have surgery done, does that mean that I don't trust God? Does that mean that I didn't pray enough? Or some of you need to release yourself from, God is going to heal me in this way, and put him in a box of your healing only being him doing it supernaturally. And that's not for everybody. Let me be clear about that, because there are some people that you do need to be on your face. You do need to pray and fast, and God is going to move on your behalf. Absolutely. But I also want us to understand that there are some things that God may use a doctor to assist in your healing process. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to feel guilty about that. You don't have to feel like you didn't have enough faith. But at the end of the day, seek God, pray, hear from him, and follow where you have peace. I always say that. Follow where you have peace, because God is not going to allow you to go but so far with something that is not in his will, that he does not sign off on, and allow you to remain in peace. That's not how he operates. If you have consulted your Father, if you have prayed and sought the Lord, he will answer. It may not be the answer that you want or that you expect, but he will answer and he will move. And I'm sharing this as someone who I'm in the messy middle. I am right in the middle of it, and I'm having to believe God by faith for a lot of things in this season. But I want to encourage you that if you are believing God for healing, if you're waiting on God for healing and you have not seen him move, do not allow your current circumstances to make you lose sight of who God is and who he has always been. I'm not saying that to minimize your current experience. I'm not saying that to say that you are wrong for how you feel, or that you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be disappointed. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that God can hold space for both things. He can hold space for your frustrations, your anger, your disappointment, your resentment, your bitterness. He can hold space for all of that. And he can also hold space if you need to release those feelings towards him. But he can also hold space for you to surrender your plans, your will, your thoughts of how your healing was going to look, and really trust him at whatever that may look like. I know this is super long. I told you I won't go give no more disclaimers, but I hope that this helped someone. I hope it encouraged someone. And let me say this, for women who are struggling with fibroids, I completely know that my experience is very minimal in comparison to a lot of women who are losing significant amount of blood, that they're having to have blood transfusions. They're ending up hospitalized, that they are hemorrhaging. Like, I'm fully aware that the symptoms and things that I'm experiencing are very minimal on the scale of what a lot of women go through when it comes to fibroids. And so I'm not even sitting here trying to act like my situation is the worst of the worst, because it is far from it. But for those of you who are experiencing them, I will say, get second opinions, get third opinions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to do your research. Don't be afraid to look into different procedures, whatever it might be, if that's where you feel like God is leading you to. I'm not telling y'all to go and have a uterine fibroid embolization. I'm telling you that's what I had peace with. I do intend to, probably not for the podcast, I'll likely share it on my YouTube channel, just kind of documenting my process with that as well. Because as I was doing my own research, I didn't have a hard time per se finding women talking about having the procedure. It was more so following up afterwards. And so I do want to be intentional about just kind of sharing my journey as well, because it was helpful for me to hear from other women who went through the process so I could have an idea of what to expect pain wise, what to expect in recovery, what to expect 3 months from now, 6 months, a year, etc. So I do intend to share that journey. Like I said, it will likely be on my YouTube channel versus doing another episode on the podcast. But I hope this was helpful. I know this was a lot. A little different, a little TMI, y'all all up in my all up in my lady parts today. But I hope that this encouraged someone in some way. I hope that this helps you to find peace even in the waiting, in the unknown. The uncertainty of a lot of things can cause you to move without God or move before God. Trust him even in his silence. Trust him even when you feel like he's not moving quick enough or fast enough. Trust him and be at peace with where you feel led, because God will lead you. It may not look the way that you want it to, but don't reject it because it's not your first choice, because it's not how you want it to be healed, but know that God is going to go before you. So yeah, that's all I have for you ladies. I hope that this was encouraging, helpful in some way. I'm bringing you all in on, like I said, a journey that I've been on for the last 3 years. And at the end of the day, I do believe that this is a step for me personally. I'm not encouraging, telling nobody else what they need to do. I do believe for me personally, this is a step in the right direction. And so I will keep y'all updated. But until next time, don't forget to share this with a friend, anyone that you know who may be going through something similar or needs some encouragement to just continue to believe God, regardless of what things may look like. And even when you are waiting for him and it feels like he's not healing you, just trusting his sovereignty, trusting his hand in your life, and trusting the track record that you have with him. So until next time, don't forget, be whole, be healed, and be authentic. And I will see you all next Thursday. Bye.